Hard work, real talk, no shortcuts. I'm Joseph Cabrera. This is American Operator. All right, team. We got Michael here, Alamo Glass, an Austin native. And if you're sitting here, if you were watching us sit here talking, you're a tall dude, man.
I am. Yeah.
You said
6'5".
6'5",
Yeah.
man. And you said you're deceptively tall is what you were chatting with?
I feel like I'm right on that line of I'm tall, but I'm not like freakishly tall.
Yeah.
And so people often underestimate how tall I am because I'm a bigger guy. So they recognize that. I even was called like Big Mike at some parts of my life, but I'm not like 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
So I'm not hitting my head on doors, but I'm also a pretty stinking tall guy.
Yeah, tall guy. I mean, tall guy. If you were walking through the door, I would have thought, oh yeah, here's a former football player, and more importantly, here's somebody who might be a little tough to talk to. I think your approachability right off the bat is probably what makes you. I've never. It's like shirt sizing.
Yeah.
Wears small. Yeah. Like Michael talks smaller than he is, but I mean that in the best ways. Yeah. Speaking of which, talking small and being in front of people, we're going to get into Alamo Glass and how you got in the trades and that whole thing, man. Mm-hmm. But what I know to be true is that you actually started off with a heavy focus in theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So talk to me about how a guy goes from acting and being on stage, being the passion, to now being in the trades.
Man, yeah, it's a pretty interesting journey and one that I definitely wouldn't have necessarily picked for myself. Not that I would change anything, but just it's kind of out of the ordinary. So I grew up playing baseball. So I wasn't a football player, even though I pretty early on had the size to play football. I chose baseball.
Yeah.
Played baseball up until high school, and in middle school jumped into theater just as one of my electives and fell in love with it. And so I did that all in high school, and actually halfway through high school dropped baseball to really focus on theater because I was like, man, I could do this. I was good at it, and I just really loved it. Found a really cool community there. And so
how did you even give that a try? Were you like, I need to pick an elective?
It was like my brother did band. He's 4 years older than me. He did band, and I was like, I don't play any instruments. I don't want to be in band, which I get it. Like in middle school, no one plays instruments. That's like where they learn. So, but that's what was going through my mind is like, I sing. So I was also a choir kid. And so I don't know. I just was like, man, I was definitely the kid that performed. Like I was the kid who at holidays is getting up in the living room with my family there, and
you're the life of the party.
I would put costumes on and do that, but it wasn't something that I thought that early on was like, I'm going to do something with this. Yeah. It was just like, I like being in front of people. I love making people laugh. I love, just honestly being the center of attention at that point in my life. That's phased over life, luckily, with maturity. But at that point in my life, it was definitely, I love just being in front of people. And so when we got to pick electives in middle school, I was like, yeah, I'll go do theater. That sounds fun. Put on some costumes and make people laugh. And so I did that and really fell in love with the whole process behind acting. Because even at that stage, I had a great theater teacher in middle school that just taught about learning storylines and how to memorize lines. I also had just a natural knack for memorizing. So that was something that pretty early on, I was like, hey, I'm pretty okay at this, even just the background pieces of being an actor. And so carried that through high school, decided in high school to drop baseball and do theater, and knew that I wanted to go do it in college. And so I was actually a theater major and went to Baylor University and decided to major in theater. And about halfway through school, I was like, I love this, but I don't really want to do the New York, LA struggling actor barista thing. Yeah. Plus I was paying my way through school. And so I was like, I'm not going to be able to afford that. I got loan payments starting. So picked up a minor actually in marketing in college, focused on entertainment marketing. So I very quickly went to Nashville after school, lived there, worked in the record industry, worked for a record label in marketing, and then did tour management. So I was doing day-to-day business for bands out on the road and traveling all around the country.
Interesting, really?
Yeah.
And any ones that we recognize?
I was out with Switchfoot. I was out with the label that I was with was a Christian music label. And so like that was the natural relationships that I had initially. So I actually did a stint with Switchfoot. Third Day is another band. Jars of Clay, if you remember them, they had like some crossover hits in the 90s, which was super fun because like even when I was doing that in 2008, they were already the old guys like that had a hit when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But they totally embraced it and were awesome guys. And then Robert Randolph and the Family Band.
I mean, you did some.
So it was super fun.
And you were using that. Was that hard to get into right away? Like, or did the theater degree help, or did the marketing degree help?
I think the marketing was the direct correlation, but that was actually a pretty pivotal experience for me to really give some teeth to the "it's who you know" mantra.
Yeah.
Like every step that I took in Nashville was just like, I know this person who knows this person who knows this person, and they just give me a job because someone has vouched for me. Because I'm a kid right out of college, like I don't have experience.
Yeah.
The initial tour that I went out, I went as an assistant tour manager because I didn't have experience. And the lady that I worked for that was the tour manager basically got me every subsequent job. She just was like, this guy's sharp, he's young, he's hungry. Probably not when I was there was saying he's cheap. You can get him out on the road for nothing. And so I did that for a few tours and ended up coming back to Austin after that.
And just last thing on that job there, what was the day-to-day? I mean, when you think about entertainment marketing, what does that mean? Like putting up posters and stuff? Or
So when I was at the label, what that was us building campaigns, marketing campaigns for artists who were coming out with a new album. So we were building the entire marketing campaign as a team for these new albums. And so this was 2008, and so we were kind of on the verge of digital music becoming a thing at that point. Like record labels didn't really know what to do when I was there working, which is kind of why I was like, I'm going to find another job to do in the music industry. Because record labels at that time hadn't reinvented themselves. Streaming wasn't around yet, but digital music, and you like buy, iTunes music, and people aren't buying CDs anymore, and they're, just the trends are changing. And so we would put these campaigns together to try to sell records. And so that was what I did there. And then the day-to-day in tour management was basically doing everything business related, so the guys in the band didn't have to.
Yeah.
And so I would wake up in the morning, I would do all of the kind of pre-work, because we'd be on a tour bus heading to a location.
With the band
in the bus, and I'd be calling on the venue, hey, where are we supposed to park? Where's the green room in relation to where our parking spot is? Are the showers ready? Do you have towels? All of these logistical pieces so that they show up and can walk off and I can just guide them where they need to go. And then I'm doing settling up at the end of the night with the venue who's having to pay the band for that night.
Wow, man. I mean, what an action-packed, being
it was wild.
21, 22 years old, that's in it.
It was crazy. And it was one of those things that I look back on it now. I'm almost 40, and to think about how long ago that was for me and to think about the responsibility that I had in that moment is crazy now. But in the moment, I was just like, yeah, this is my job. This is what I do. I don't know how to do something. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to ask someone who's been in this before. Jen, who was my boss on the first tour, was an incredible resource she was so giving of her knowledge because she had been in it at that time for 15, 20 years. And so just asked a ton of questions, was really hungry to know what it all looked like and how to do certain things, and pretty quickly became natural for me. I didn't do that because I loved the business aspects at that time in my life. I did it because I was getting to be out on the road and do this cool experience and be around music.
To be around it.
Yeah, and just wanted to be around creativity. And if I had to do the not fun things to be around music for a while, that was totally okay with me. And then ended up loving some of those responsibilities that I had.
That sounds like it plays well into what you ended up doing.
Yeah.
So you guys get back to Austin and you get right into the trades, or you doing something else for a while?
No, when I moved back to Austin, I worked for another marketing company that was based out of Waco, knew some guys from college, and was working to open or kind of expand their markets into Austin from Waco. So they started out as the sorority and frat t-shirt vendor. So anytime sororities and frats were doing events and they needed t-shirts or swag or anything, they'd go to this company. They were the stop in Waco. Everyone
That's such a
knew 'em.
niche, man.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. So they wanted to do that in Austin and specifically for UT, and they were doing the same thing in College Station at A&M. And so my role was really in sales to build a market down here. And very quickly realized that I was not a work from home by myself all day making cold calls kind of guy. The company was super cool. My boss was great, but just the role itself was just not for me.
Yeah.
And so pretty quickly realized that. I spent about 2 years there, and about that time got an opportunity to come on staff at a church. And so that's where I spent the next 13 years, was on staff at a church here in Austin.
Wow, man. What were the jobs? All different kinds throughout that 13 years?
Yeah. So I started going, I came in as the program director for middle school and high school. So they would do services for middle schoolers and high schools, and they'd have camps and retreats and all this stuff. And I would basically be in charge of doing all of the program for those events and for the Sunday morning services. So that, again, utilized my background in theater, because I was doing a bunch of skit characters, and I was doing, I was getting up in front of people and having to give announcements, felt very comfortable in front of 250, 300 kids. And so I did that program director initially, and then right after that became the program director for young adults. We started a young adults ministry for 20 and 30-somethings, singles. And so I did pretty much my job for student ministry, but for young adults. And then most of my time was spent as the communications director. So in my 13 years there, the church exploded. We went from 1 campus to 3 campuses in my time there. Went from about 300 to 500 people to probably close to 7,500 to 10,000 people.
That's a chunk.
It was crazy
Yeah.
growth. And so I got a really cool front row seat to see an organization that was rapidly growing, that they had to really reinvent themselves for the sake of the growth that was happening.
Wow, man. And you end up getting the idea to buy or get into your own business while you're at church. What was the reason that prompted you to start exploring that path?
Yeah, I realized after being there for a long time that I loved my time there, but I've just had this kind of guttural sense that my time was coming to an end there. I didn't know what was next, didn't know what I wanted to do, and started having some conversations with some friends and mentors on what it looks like to get out of vocational ministry. We still go to church there, so it had nothing to do with the church itself or my leadership or organization. It really just felt like my time was done. And that's really as much as I could explain about it. And so I started having these conversations. And before I actually bought Alamo, my first stop out of ministry was in our family business, which I was 3rd generation. So my grandfather started a backup generator business in the 70s, and my dad took it over in 2000. And I joined coming out of ministry at the church with my dad as the operations manager, because we were in a crazy season of growth at that point. This was just after the snowstorms that happened a few years ago.
Everybody.
And so everyone
was just
wanted
selling
generators.
backup generators,
selling
or
and
installing?
servicing.
Okay,
and installing.
Yeah.
So on the bread and butter of the company historically was actually commercial generators. So pretty much every building downtown, every hospital, blood banks, data centers, anyone with large industrial backup generators, we had either sold them, or if someone else had sold them to them, we were the main service provider in Austin. And so we would go and do preventative maintenance on all these large generators. And that was the bulk of the company for probably 30 of its 45 years. And then the storms happened, and COVID actually was the first spike in residential for us. And that's when homeowners started knowing what a backup generator was, wanting one for their house. The snowstorms obviously just were a huge catalyst in that. Yeah. And it just went haywire. There was thousands and thousands of requests of people just like, I want a generator. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care how long it's going to take. Here's my 50% deposit. Let me know when it's coming. And so the time that I jumped on was right after that. And I came on twofold. One, to see if I wanted to take over the business because I knew I wanted to be in trades. But I had fought being in the family business pretty much my whole adult life, not because I didn't want to be there, but just because it was like, again, my whole history was creative. So it was like, if I want to be in a trade business, I want to be on the creative side. I want to do all the marketing, branding, I even had thoughts of creating an agency that specifically focused on marketing and ad for trade businesses because I saw the need was there, but I didn't want to be the guy in the operator's seat. I wanted to be the guy helping the operator at that time. And so I finally just kind of had a piece about this is the next step. And so I came in as operations manager with my dad and help him basically scale all the systems that were in place. So they went from 21 employees to 45 employees in 9 months because of the growth, like as a response to the market growth that they had experienced. And so no systems worked, none of the software that they used, if there was even software, there were still some paper forms in there.
With the triple carbon copies.
Yeah, exactly. A bunch of systems that they had, they'd outgrown them. And so with my background in the communications role at the church, I had done a lot of that in the growth of the church was scaling systems. And so I came in to help my dad with that. And meanwhile, trying to get a feel for the business. He did an awesome job of letting me sit in the driver's seat in certain ways, see behind the curtain from a business standpoint so that I could get a feel for the business and decide if I wanted to, take it over from him.
Yeah.
And
how was that dynamic? Did y'all kind of get along well in that biz?
Yeah. It was awesome. It was such a great time for us because he knew that I'd told him years and years ago, no, I don't ever want to go into it. Love it. So thankful for it and our family and the history that it has with my grandfather starting it and then dad taking it over. But I just made it pretty clear early on, like that's not for me. And so he wasn't outright about this, but I think it was pretty fun for me to be the one that's coming to him and saying, hey, I think I want to come into the family business. Like I came to him with, here's what I'm thinking I want to do, Austin Generator's really on the table for the first time. I didn't even know if he had a job for me. I knew the growth that they were experiencing because of conversations I'd had with him, but I didn't know if what he needed was what I'd do. And so we went to lunch, and soon after he was like, "You're actually exactly what I need right now because I gotta scale this thing."
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, so
I'm sure,
cool.
From a dad's perspective, what did they say? Like they know you did all right as a parent. If your kids want to keep hanging out with you outside the holidays.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and now you're asking them to come work with them.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. We had a blast with it. We were able to again, because of my background in the creative space, we actually took that opportunity to do a rebrand of the business. So didn't change the name or anything, but wanted to kind of give a fresh look to at that time, 40-year-old company and kind of reinvent the aspects of what was being put out into the world because we had this massive new captive audience in the residential space that we had never really had before the storms. And so I had a lot of fun.
You were right at the point.
On that stuff.
You entered right at the point that was like at the height of that creativity.
Totally.
What's the name of the biz?
Austin Generator Service.
Austin Generator Service. Okay.
So we did that for a few years, and I'm sitting on the fence. I'm going through these internal I love this business. I love the team. I'm having a lot of fun, but that industry is just incredibly demanding. It's just one of those, we were 24/7 support, right? So if a St. David's Hospital calls and they need their generator worked on at 2 a.m., we go. And not to say that I'd be the guy getting in my truck at 2 a.m. We've got technicians for that, but I know that the call came. I'm making sure that the on-call tech answered his phone when they called, making sure that he's got the tools that he needs to be able to make the fix because we're contractually obligated to make these repairs because a hospital can't wait until the power goes out to realize that their generator's not working. Yeah. So there was just a lot of pressure in that industry that was really bigger than the company itself was the industry that it was in. And I've got 2 young sons and a wife who also owns and runs a business. And I was like, man, I can't reconcile what this business would require of me if I'm sitting in the driver's seat solo and what I want my life to look like outside of work. And outside of owning a business. And so it's kind of having this internal struggle with that and having really open conversations with my dad about it, which was really great. He was always so open-handed with like, just tell me where you're at. Like, he made it clear through our whole adult lives, like, if you ever want to come into the business or take over the business, like, that'd be awesome, but I'm never going to push you to do it. And so when I'm having these struggles, I won't even call them struggles, but just kind of like internalizing some of this stuff and having these conversations with him, we were just really open with each other, which was super helpful for me to be able to process through that.
Yeah.
And one day he, came to me in my office. He's like, "Hey, let's go get coffee." And we go get coffee, because meanwhile, I'm not really making any moves. I'm kind of comfortable. I've got a good job. I've got a business that's growing. I just walked us through a massive rebrand that's been really fun to work in and have that chance to scratch the creative itch within a generator business. So we go to coffee, and he's like, "So what are you thinking these days?" And I was like, "I really just don't know. I can't. I'm having some decision paralysis here, because I see the pros and I see the cons. And I don't really know." And he just says, "Okay, well, I've got a buyer that wants to buy the business, and I'm at a fork in the road where I need to either cut off the communications or I need to keep walking down that road." And in that moment, I just had this immediate peace that it wasn't for me.
Like offering that made you go, you should like release it.
It was crazy, because we sat and talked. I will forever remember sitting on the patio at Starbucks, having a coffee, and we sit there for 4 hours talking. And all of it started with him basically, setting out that baton and going, "Hey, it's yours to pick up, but I'm not going to make you pick it up. But if you're not, I'm going to give it to someone else." And in that moment, I just was like, "This isn't mine. Like, this is, I don't feel strongly enough to keep walking down the road towards a transition plan with him. And I know that he has a desire to retire and to ride off into the proverbial sunset. And he bought an RV when he retired. And so I knew that too. I was like, "You're waiting to go get your RV and just travel the country."
Yeah.
And so I just was like, "Yeah, this isn't for me." And so he just was like, I'm going to move forward with this buyer. And so I was all on board. And so we started, he had already started the process, but, I jumped into that with him. So that was a pretty cool experience to get to sit on the sell side of an acquisition. And we had a pretty unique process with them. It was originally to a singular buyer buying both the residential and the commercial side, but they didn't have residential in their portfolio. They were strictly a commercial service business for generators nationwide that's basically going and buying shops like ours. But my dad was like, "I'm not selling half my business. Like, you have to buy the residential part as well." And so they were like all in on that at first, and they were basically going to just roll down the residential side, like see out the rest of the work in progress, and then shut off that part, commercial. And then focus on the commercial. And partway through the process, they just decided they didn't want the residential anymore. At least it's a private equity backed, so the backers decided that they didn't want the residential. They saw it as a liability. They saw it as an expense. And so they just didn't, they made that change midway, and he stuck to his guns and was like, "Hey, I told you from the beginning, I'm not selling half my business. So if you want to buy the commercial side, you need to go find me a buyer for the residential. I'm putting that on you." And they did. And they found another group that just bought the residential side. And so amplified the intensity of that process, because you're going through simultaneous due diligence. He wrote into both contracts that if one doesn't close, the other doesn't close, simultaneous close, all of these pieces that just made the work, some of it overlap, but it pretty much doubled the work, especially for him and our controller, who was doing a lot of the financial preparation of all these documents for
how
two
long from
buyers.
Him telling from y'all having that combo about, "Hey, I'm having this buyer fork in the road," to closing and driving off into the sunset? How long was that?
We had that conversation in May, and we closed in January.
Okay.
So what is that?
7 months,
8 months.
Yeah, 6, 7 months. Yeah.
And so closing got pushed a few times. We were initially supposed to close in July of that. They had already gotten supposedly what they needed by the time he was bringing me into the fold, for him to make a decision to keep moving forward or not. But he'd already prepared a lot of documents for the buyer. And then, having the two separate buyers, we had to start that process over. They're asking for different things than what he had prepared for the buyers initially, and all that. So it pushed the close date back a few months and a couple times, but we ended up closing in January.
Were you and your dad pretty savvy with the whole like, obviously you hadn't sold a business maybe before, but do you feel like y'all were very comfortable in kind of getting whatever diligence and stuff was needed from the buyer, or was that also just a steep learning curve?
So my dad actually had sold a business before. He had sold one before. He had another business that was under the umbrella of his generator business that he sold a few years back. And so he had an understanding of the process. I was drinking from a massive fire hose. I didn't know anything about this process. And so that was a really cool opportunity for me to have a front row seat to that stuff, because when we're looking at documents that we're sending over, I'm looking at the documents going like, why do they want this? I get these reports, but why this report? We're talking a lot about valuation. Hey, why is this the valuation that they're saying on the business when we could argue that it's this, this, and this, and how do we come to the resolve? And so there was just a lot of information intake for me to learn that whole process, because I really had never even tangentially known about what acquisitions look like.
Yeah. Was there something that surprised you in particular? Like, was there a thing that stuck out to you, good or bad, that you were like, oh man, I had no idea?
I think the thing that stuck out to me the most was the fickleness of the process. Like that was crazy to me, that there were just these, hey, we've got papers signed that say this, and then someone can just decide in the middle of the process, no, I want it to be this now, and we're not going to move forward anymore if it doesn't change to this. And I think that, especially when you're dealing with private equity-backed organizations the way that we were, you've got the owner of the company and even the broker, and then you've got these kind of far-off money guys that aren't in the process at all, but they just get documentation sent to them from the process, and then they make decisions and changes and all that. And so I think that's probably the thing that threw me off, and because I had never been in it before, was the most frustrating, because I was also a little protective of my dad, of just like, you spent your life building this thing. It is so valuable. It is a great company. They're lucky. They had actually pursued him for like 5 years previous to him ever opening up the conversations, because they knew it was a great company and they wanted to acquire it, but he wasn't ready, and it wasn't the right time for either him or the company, one or the two. And so I think, there was some frustration on my part for sure at times, and I'd vent with him like, what, those guys are idiots. Like, what are they changing this for? And why didn't they say that 4 months ago? Like, why is this just now being brought to the table? And so I think that was the piece that was the most eye-opening in the process. It's just how much of a moving target it is until you sign on the dotted line. Because you think as you get closer to the finish line, it gets more solid and more concrete. Yeah. But it's almost like, no, you don't, what's the fat lady singing? Like, do not count this as something that's done until it's done, because it can literally end at 11:59 p.m. when you're supposed to sign at noon. Yeah,
we say it's one of the last probably bigger transactional things in America that's still the Wild West.
Yeah.
There is no, I mean, even in real estate, you have earnest money and you have these semi-binding things or extremely binding things, whereas in this world, it really is up to the eye of the beholder. And you're also dealing with momentum or lack of momentum. So like there's things that you could probably make a big deal about, but is it worth your time and effort and all these things? What do you, it sounded like to me that let me back up. We talk to operators here or aspiring owners, quite a bit. And one of the things that we tell them quite frequently is, because a lot of them are coming from like a financial background or have done investment banking or an MBA in the corporate world, whatever it might be. And a lot of the times they're kind of attacking it or approaching it like a math problem. and using kind of the Excel spreadsheet to kind of be the way they reason.
Yeah.
What I heard you just say is like, which I think is perfect, is like, I'm protective of my father and the effort that they've built this thing. What's a piece of advice you'd give to somebody who, whether they're private equity backed or just a solo person coming in, what's the one thing that you'd go, if you do nothing else, this is the thing you want to make sure you get right from the beginning.
Yeah.
If there's a way to get this process to be as smooth as possible, like this is what I'd recommend.
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say probably the thing that I would recommend someone just have from day one before they ever start the process. And you're talking from sell side or from buy side, actually?
From the buyer. Yeah. Like imagine maybe another way said is like, what's something that if that buyer walked through the door and kind of kept consistent the whole time would have allowed y'all to just to feel maybe less protective because you didn't need to be?
Yeah, I would say the thing that being on the same page as to the mechanism that you're using to value the company. Because I think that's where I've seen from buddies who have been in acquisitions from both sides before, doing the amount of reading that I've done on it through the process of acquiring my business now. And even in my experiences, it's where you're not on the same page when it comes to the value of the company and what establishes that value. That's where things get messy, because I think, especially in a historical, I won't even say historical, but like a legacy company, the way that our family company was, or even how Alamo was that I bought, there's so much emotional, tie to that business. Yeah. That they're adding to that value. And so from a buyer's standpoint, and what I don't think that the buyers of our family business really took into account, which, not to fault them, that's their model, but I think a lot of the friction that was felt is like, I put my whole life, that's my dad, I put my whole life into this business. There's certain parts of the value of this company that are tied to the brand that I've built, as well as whether you're working off of EBITDA or you're working off of cash flow or whatever you need to do. Just get on the same page as far as like how big those pieces of the pie are in your mind. Because as I've walked through the process, I've realized, like, when I was on the buy side, I kind of had to pick my battles from a valuation standpoint. Like, I knew what I was working off of. I established that clearly with the broker. And in that process, still, there were times when I think that it just got emotional for the seller, because this is his life. And I want to be able to recognize part of the value that I am buying in the company is all of that work that he's put into it. Like, there's a reason that I'm buying a 60-year-old company and not going and starting a glass company. And it's because of the brand that he built, not more so, but just in addition to the financial ramifications. And so taking that into account from a valuation standpoint and having those conversations openly, I think, is so helpful.
Yeah, it's the human part of it too, just recognizing that the person across the table from you has an appreciation for what was built. And even if at some point maybe you land on saying, hey, look, Michael, like I can't give you the extra because of that, like it just doesn't pencil for me. At least they know you're coming from a respectful place and not like just dismissive of 40 years of, whatever, might have come together.
Yeah.
Okay, so the business gets sold. Does Dad ride off into the sunset with the RV?
Does.
Okay, yeah.
He's been to like 6 national parks at this point.
Good on him, man.
Yeah.
It's goals, right, for you to look into. Yeah, things that you got something to look forward to. So what was the next step? You took a hiatus and figured out, or did you stay with the company, or what happened after that?
So I was on for 90 days helping my dad through the transition once we closed. But that really there wasn't a huge amount of responsibility during that 90 days for me. Okay. It was basically be on call if the buyers need access to this software, they need, a document that I created for all of their paperwork, be available for them. So it wasn't super common for me to be needed. I wasn't like in the office. After closing, I was no longer in office. I was just at home, basically on call for them and available. So 90 days of that. But that allowed me to start my process on figuring out what was next pretty immediately. So I didn't know if I wanted to go get a job. Did I want to start something? I'd known enough people in the entrepreneurial acquisition to go and explore that route a little bit, and pretty quickly determined that was what I wanted to do. I'm not a 0 to 1 guy. I never really saw myself as someone doing a startup, although I'd never wanted to take that possibility off the table completely because I was like scared of it or something. But I knew pretty clearly about myself that it's just, I really like going into something and growing it and making it more efficient, making it better, leading teams. And so the idea of going and starting something from scratch pretty quickly was like, it's not for me. And so decided that I wanted to go down the route of finding a long-standing business to buy. Knew I wanted to be still in kind of the trades, blue-collar world, but I didn't really have an industry in mind. I knew that I didn't want to be in 24/7 emergency services anymore. But I looked at all different types of companies: marble and stone fabrication companies, flooring companies, HVAC. I went and explored CPG for a minute, which was pretty fun. Like, pretty quickly realized I didn't want to go into that world, but it was really fun to explore it for a minute. And then meanwhile, in this process, I'm kind of trying to not use a broker. I'd been advised by some guys that I know that from the buy side, they're like, there's really not, unless you're having trouble finding deal flow, there's not a huge upside to using a broker. At least that's what they communicated to me. If you can find an off-market deal or friend of a friend or someone who's in that space that can get you deal flow, then go do that. It's going to be a smoother process. And so that's what I was doing. I was meeting with CPAs and bankers and lawyers that were in the M&A space and building some really cool relationships and getting connected to some deal flow. But I went and had coffee with my father-in-law, who owns a business as well, and told him, this is what I've been looking at, and trying not to use a broker. And he's like, I get why you wouldn't want to use a broker, but I actually use this broker over here that brokered the deal for my business when I bought it. And the way he described it is, he said he does a really good job of playing Switzerland. And so he represents the seller. It's very clear that he represents the seller, but any time that I had, questions or concerns on valuation or wanted to ask for concessions in the asking price, he always was just so open to having those conversations, and he'd actually take them to the seller and they'd have their conversations, and he'd come back and give the concession sometimes, not give the concession other times, and they'd just talk through it. So he just spoke very highly of this broker, because I think that was one of the things too that was off-putting for me in the idea of using a broker was like, what benefit, again, other than deal flow, what benefit is to me? Like, you're trying to get highest price so that you can get your commission to the most of your ability. This is where my mind was at the time, and didn't really, see a huge plus side. And so when he's talking about this and just how the guy that was the broker had been a small business owner that had bought and sold businesses over the course of decades, and so he just he spoke highly of him and said, just go have lunch with him, see if he'd be a good fit. And he ended up brokering our deal as well, and is who introduced me to the former owner of Alamo.
Looking back on it now, what are the benefits of having, are you glad that you used a broker on this?
I am. I'm glad that I used it, because I don't think I would have been connected to this opportunity outside of a broker. Like, I didn't have any tangential relationships to him, to the owner or to the broker, other than my father-in-law, but I wouldn't like meet him in passing.
Yeah.
So I think the benefits to me were the expedience of getting documentation. Like, I think, had I done the process that we went through, just me and the former owner, and all the things that I'd be requesting from him and asking of him, I think he helped speed up that process, the broker did, and really guiding the seller, who had just been a glass guy for 50 plus years. And
that person started it?
His father-in-law started it, but he took over like 3 years into the company. So it's the majority of the history of this 60-year-old company were him.
Wow.
And so I think he really helped navigate that process for the seller, and that prevented a lot of frustration on my part going, hey, I need this from you. And he's like, I don't know where to get that. You know, I'll see what I can do. So the educational side on the seller, the sell side, I think was really valuable to me as a buyer, because I was able to kind of come into the process, and the broker had already gathered a lot of that stuff before he took it to market. So it wasn't like we were waiting real time versus, hey, I meet this seller through a mutual friend, find out he wants to sell, he finds out I want to buy, and we're starting from scratch in process. Like I came in to, here's a folder of all of this stuff that we already have.
Yeah.
Because they had needed to prepare it from taking it to market.
Kind of prepares the environment for it to be can be productive. Mm-hmm. I think probably the horror stories probably come from the non-Switzerland types, or the folks that don't add to it. Just like anything, it's like a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Like there's some great ones out there, and there's some really bad ones out there, and you just got to see who you pick.
Yeah,
so,
I'd been given the impression that there was kind of this like car salesman kind of feel to brokers. I didn't really ever know any brokers.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of taking it at face value of what I was told and recommended. And I think that a lot of that probably came from the fact that they are in that process too. These guys that were recommending, like lawyer, CPA, like they're just like, brokers just complicate things.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I get that from their perspective. But I ended up having a really great process with him, and we had some back and forth. We actually pushed pause in the middle of the process for about 2 months, which I thought it was dead. I thought we weren't going to move forward.
Who pushed pause? The owner? Or you? Oh, the broker did.
Yeah, because basically we came to them in the process, and I said, you know, I'm having a little bit of heartburn on the valuation of this company because of X, Y, and Z in the financials. And it was because they were just experiencing kind of some downturn in the quarter, when we happened to be going through this process. So, and when he'd send us monthly updates on the financials, it started just kind of tapering a little bit. And I'm like, wait, is everything okay? And so they really just needed to kind of go back to the drawing board and put some of those numbers together again, reevaluate some of what they were asking for and what reality was versus, I think a lot of it, what we just talked about with kind of the emotional value versus the financial value, and how do we find that middle ground between the two. And so, they came back a couple months later and had actually dropped the asking price from what we initially had been at, which put it more into the scope of what I thought it was actually
worth.
And so we kept moving forward and ended up closing almost a year to the day from when we closed our family business. So sold in January of 24 and then closed on this buy in January of this year.
Would you say that you were particularly fortunate that it was that amount of time, like a year? Or do you feel like, did you feel like it was long, or did you feel like it was short? Just being able to write what you expected timeline wise to go hunting for a business and actually get the keys?
Yeah, I don't think I knew what to expect. I will say that when we sold and I stepped away from my day-to-day responsibilities and was in kind of that 90-day period with them, my wife and I talked and basically were like, hey, let's give ourselves a year. And so it's kind of crazy that it ended up being almost exactly a year, because that was just something that came to mind of like, hey, I'd love to not just take a break for the sake of taking a break, but this is a big decision that I don't want to rush into because we've set some kind of unrealistic timeline on ourselves. And a year to find and close on a business felt at that time pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And so we just said, hey, let's give ourselves a year. And if we're getting close to that year and we need to reevaluate, or I need to just go get a job while we continue the hunt, like we can figure that out. But yeah, I gave ourselves a year from when we closed on the family business to find something.
It's what would you say happened in addition to having combos with your wife and getting aligned on there? Were there other things you felt like set into place to be patient with the process? Did you guys have a huge nest egg? Like, I'm always curious because it's one of the things we hear quite a bit. We all get impatient and antsy about things. I'm curious what you did to kind of keep that year possible.
Yeah, I think that the main things were that I've got a wife who works full time as well, and so we were in a place where I think if we were coming from a place where I was working in the family business and then all of a sudden I'm not working and she's a stay-at-home mom, like that would have been a completely different conversation. So the fact that she had that stability for us, that we had, just closed on a business, but a lot of the money that we had from that was going towards the future, whatever it is. And I'd say we tightened the screws a little bit, sharpened our pencils financially as a family to be able to do that, to just figure out like, how do we make this happen over the course of a year? But yeah, I think that we basically just said, I think the idea of coming up with a year timeline for ourselves was just as much about how reasonable it was as much as it was what we could handle financially. So I think that was also a part of it. Hey, how long do we think we could go to allow us to do this search and do it right? And the year was just kind of what we figured out for ourselves. So we didn't have this huge savings. We didn't have any kind of preparation previous to selling where we were going, hey, I know that the sale of this thing is coming up. Let's start, tightening the screws now in preparation for that. We didn't do any of that. We just kind of said, hey, this is, in our current reality, a year is a good time for us.
Yeah. Let's say you had broke that year and got into a year and 2 months, year and 5 months. Do you think you would have found something and still were hunting? Or do you think you would have, this may not ever have came to true? Like looking back on it, what do you think would have?
Oh man, I don't know. I think I wanted to do it bad enough that if we had crept over a year, I would have just found a way to make money and keep hunting.
Yeah.
I've got a few buddies who've done that and they've moonlighted. I don't know.
Yeah, I was using this word,
Yeah.
the word sink. I want to sink it with you.
Yeah.
I said to somebody earlier today, after we sunk up, then I was like, is that a word to sunk up?
Sunk up. Let's get sunk up. We sunk up. Yeah, I don't know.
Makes sense. It's a Texas word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that I would have just figured out like, what do I need to do to just generate income while we continue the search? But I don't think it would have stopped the search.
No, I mean, and just from my seat, what seems to me, and this may or may not be true, but what seems to me that I think was probably really impactful in your probably thought process behind that is, I mean, here's a guy that I'm watching that's, observed on your family side and your wife's side, on your side and her side, owners, and that what that life is. Then you worked in that business. And then you're like, I'm going to go do it for myself. So I think there's probably deeply rooted understanding of what you're looking and what you're asking for. Whereas I can see some folks that come through here and after like 6 months of hunting, it's just like, it's too much. I don't have the time for it. And I don't know, it might be some indicators that this may or may not be a fit for you then to go do this kind of thing. With that line of thinking, I'm curious, like and I know this is a broad, because the industries are CPG to glass. The folks who end up getting into owning and operating, do you find, especially with your buddies, do y'all find that there's a common personality trait or drive or something that you can kind of go like, yeah, it makes sense why that person's an owner?
Yeah, I think it's just, I think the common threads, at least to the people that I know, are just kind of, they're all personalities of just like, pull your boots up and like, let's go.
Yeah.
What's funny is the closest friends of mine who have either bought businesses or started businesses, they all have such different skills as far as like, I know a guy who bought a laundry service in Denver that is, a finance guy, was in oil and gas finance. Then I know another guy who is running operations for a large cleaning company, and he ended up starting his own company in a different industry. And I'm obviously this weird background, like I don't have, at least by trade or by schooling, I didn't go to business school. I didn't study finance. I had a lot of these gaps, if you will, of what my background was. But at the same time, I had experience in running teams and organizations and being a part of stuff. And so I think all of the common wiring is just figure it out. Like you're going to run into really great scenarios and you're going to have to figure out what to do in that scenario. And then you're going to run into really hard scenarios. You're going to have to figure out what to do in that scenario. Like the growth that Austin Generator experienced after the storms was a great problem, but it was still a problem. And you had to figure it out. Like we had to reinvent the majority of the back end of our company because of the response to a market change. And so I think it's just all the personalities of people, like even my father-in-law who had done tech forever and then had his business in the trades. He had a huge, season of learning and taking the skills that he had with his finance background and going, how does this move into, a trade business? And then, just seeing all of the different guys that I've known and gals that I've known over the years that have run businesses, they're all just, just get up and figure it out kind of personality, not too overwhelmed by the great times or the terrible times.
Yeah. They're not like, they're also, would you say they also seem to default to action?
Yes.
They're kind of like, I'm not going to think about this too much. I'm doing this.
Yeah. You gotta go.
Yeah. Gotta go. So how's Glass going? How long have you owned it so far?
It's about 6 months now.
Okay.
So it's still really, really fresh.
Yeah. So what are give me for folks who maybe don't know what the glass business is, how would you give them kind of the quick synopsis of what the business does?
Sure. So we're not a window and door company. I always start with that when people are asking
that's
about
a good
being
start
in a glass
because that's
business.
exactly where you would go to.
Yeah. So we're
windows and doors.
We're not a window and door company. We do everything with glass. So we deal with window glass and door glass all the time, but we don't do anything structurally with windows and doors. So there's two sides of our business, a commercial and a residential. And on the commercial side, we're typically doing storefront glass. So that part we do fabricate and install frames. The aluminum storefront frames that you see on a lot of retail and storage unit places and restaurants and, even apartment complexes. A lot of time the lobby areas will be storefront. So we do quite a bit of that. So we have storefront on the commercial side. Also have repairs that are happening when, someone comes along and takes a baseball bat to a big storefront glass. We'll go and repair it, replace it, all that. And then on the residential side, we do frameless showers, mirrors, decorative glass tabletops, window glass repair. So when that hailstorm blew through about a month ago through Central Austin, we had tons of calls come in of just broken panes of glass. So we go and we can actually cut out the existing glass, put new glass in, recaulk it, and do all that stuff. So yeah, anything having to do with glass, basically, we'll handle. I will say with the caveat, we don't do auto glass.
Okay.
So that's the only segment of the glass world that we don't deal with.
Is residential bigger or commercial, just by revenue perspective?
Revenue perspective, we're probably at about 60-40 to 70-30, somewhere in that range.
More
commercial.
More commercial.
So volume of jobs is definitely higher on the residential side. We have a retail location. People are doing walk-ins, getting, picture frame glass replaced that was broken by a baseball or whatever.
Yeah.
So we do that kind of stuff all day, every day. We have residential calls to people's homes all day, every day. And then the commercial jobs are larger jobs that we're accomplishing over the course of weeks or months.
What's the parts of the business that either at the beginning attracted you to it and even now 6 months in that are just like, this is why I love this business?
The simplicity.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
It doesn't sound simple to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're like, we do glass, but it's not the two things you initially thought.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We're not windows and doors and we're not cars. I think the simplicity in the sense of we are a needed product and a needed service that will not go away. That's something else that really made me fall in love with it is when I was going through the process and looking at all these different companies, a friend of mine mentioned businesses that have a moat around them as a valuable thing about that business, meaning it's something that is simple, but not something that you would see like a Chuck in a truck be able to come and undercut you pretty easily. Mm-hmm. Like the scope of projects that we're doing, yes, there are Chuck in a trucks, but not in the way that you see like electricians. Like I can go work with this huge electrical company, or I can work with this electrician who just works for himself, and he's probably going to be way cheaper than that company. He has zero overhead. That exists in glass, but it's not super prevalent. You mostly have companies that are dealing with it, I think, because of safety regulations, access to ordering the types of glass, specialized glass that we need for a lot of our projects. And so I think the simplicity of the product and industry in the sense of it is very clear, people need this, we provide this, we get paid.
Yeah.
Like that's the simplicity of it. We're not dealing with service contracts. We deal with warranty issues, but very minimally. So we're not a heavy warranty-based company. We're not, I think a large part of why we've never gone into the auto glass space is because of dealing with warranty and insurance companies, auto insurance companies, where you're doing claims through them and you have to go deal with them all the time. Like I think our company at one point did auto glass, and they stopped doing it because it was just a hassle. Yeah. And so the simplicity of the business is what I fell in love with. And then just the long-standing history. Like I knew from the beginning of my search that I was not going to buy a business that had been in existence for 5 years. As successful as it could be, there was something that was invaluable to me about a business that had stuck through everything, because that was true of our family business, and I saw the value in that. So to come into a business that had the foundation of lasting through, for this company, they went through a ton. They went through 2008 and they made it. They went through COVID, they made it. They went through the 80s and the spikes in the economy over the course of those years. And I think part of that is because of the stability of the industry, because again, glass isn't going anywhere. But I think it was also the stability of the market for a business that provides something like this.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, like, AI isn't going to replace someone putting in glass. It might make our lives easier. It might make manufacturing better or cheaper or whatever, but it's not going to replace us. And so that was what I fell in love with the business.
Yeah. Is just for my education, are y'all making the glass too? Or y'all?
We're not.
Okay.
We just order we've got vendors in larger cities, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and we just order our glass
what you need from them, and then you guys are going in there and y'all are installing it and stuff.
We're installing it. We've got a whole glass cutting shop at our location in town. So we're actually the only shop in town that'll cut glass for you while you wait. So a lot of people will cut glass for you, but it's going to be, you come back tomorrow and we'll have it ready for you.
Yeah.
I think that down the road there's a possibility that I could explore moving into the manufacturing side, because I think that could be a cool part of the growth trajectory. But right now it just makes total sense for us to outsource.
To get in there. What are the things that currently, I know it's still early days, but right now maybe keep you up at night a little bit about the business outside of the normal owner things, like, keeping this thing moving?
I'd say the pieces still to me are, because I'm not an industry veteran, because I'm really a first-time solo business owner outside of co-owning with my family, I think the thing that keeps me up the most is, like, I am only as good as my people. And that will always be true. Even if I'm 25 years into doing it, I'm only as good as my people that are working for me.
Yeah.
And so the things that probably keep me up at night is people leaving and having, not to say that they're not replaceable, but it's just the hassle that you have to walk through in staffing. And we'll go through hopefully growth staffing. But in these first 6 months, I think the sit up in bed sweating kind of thing is like a bad dream about showing up on a Monday and there's a note on the door that's like, we all quit, But they haven't done that yet, so that's great.
But we like the new guy enough.
We've got a great team, and when I was looking at businesses, that was another huge part for me, because I knew I wasn't going to go into something that I could be the guy doing all the stuff, that I needed to have a really solid team. But that's another weird dynamic, because none of them knew that I was taking over until the day of close, and I walk in, I'm like, hey, I'm the new owner, And so there's a great team in place, and there's some adjustments that they've had to make to having me as the owner instead of the former owner. And I've tried to be really open with that stuff, be really communicative, and really clear on what my expectations are for where I want to take this company, setting a vision for where I want to take this thing, and just giving them the opportunity to decide for themselves if they want to jump on board or not. But with that trajectory and with that vision comes potentially some new expectations on accountability and quality of work and communication and all these different aspects that are just a part of the everyday business, that I have to be unapologetic on where I want to take this thing, but also realize that they're people, not robots, that are working for me, that have lives and families. And I want to be really graceful with communicating to them when we're making changes on here's why we're doing this. What are your thoughts on doing this? What are, you've mentioned before in some of your videos about the best things you can do in the first 30 days. And I watched that and I was like, it's kind of cool. I did that stuff. And I was totally like swinging blind,
So you're natural.
And it was just like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like it's really important that you let people know who you are, that you care about them, that they're heard, and that you really communicate clearly. Because I tell all my people, the best thing that I can do for you is let you know what I expect and give you the tools to accomplish it. Because then we're not on separate pages. And I think a lot of the rifts that come in new ownership and these transitions is like new guy comes in and he's distant and he's got his expectations on what this thing is going to look like, but he's not communicating it with his people. And so I've tried to, as much as I can, really communicate clearly, like, here's where I want to go. I believe that you can be valuable parts of getting us there and be a valuable part of this team, but it's going to take X, Y, and Z in this new season. And, realizing that I'm not the former owner, and I need to realize that for myself, and they need to realize that of me. And I need to be really graceful with how I communicate that and not just be a bull in a china shop and go, new owner, new direction, get on board or get off.
Yeah.
There's sometimes that I kind of have that mentality in my head, like you got to get on or get off, but I'm not going to communicate it that way. I'm going to be very conversational with people because they're people and they want to be a part of something that feel like they're contributing to and valuable with.
It's always in the how. It's how, right?
Absolutely.
Here's where we're going. This is why I think it's in the best interest of the company. Would love for you to be on, but I also understand if you won't, this doesn't fit you. And I think that's the part that leading, owning, operating, it's the part in the job description, so to speak, that they don't always, that's not always the first reason you get into it, which is like you get paid to make the hard calls.
Right.
Speaking of hard calls, are you having, I guess you would not consider glass 24/7.
Right.
So that's probably the thing that's probably a nice thing part of the business is that you don't have a tech on call at 2 a.m. installing glass somewhere.
If someone calls us on the weekend, we'll get to your call on Monday morning when we get in.
In the meantime, put a bag, tape.
Figure it out. There's some key commercial customers that might have access to us that should, like a car drive through. Yeah, we'll send a guy out tomorrow or tonight to come board it up for you.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk Monday to figure out what the long-term solution is, those kinds of pieces. But those are so few and far between. And I love the fact that that I have that bandwidth with my family to be able to be all in, running this business, pouring into it, growing it, taking it on a new trajectory, and also be a dad and also be a husband. And that was so valuable to me moving into this process, is I wanted to do both. And I think we've kind of bought into the idea that you have to sacrifice one or the other. And I think that's true sometimes depending on what you're doing and how you're wired. Like I think some business owners are just naturally wired to be so excited about this thing. They just go all in and kind of neglect pieces outside of that business. But I kind of came into it with this foundation of, I've got a friend who uses a phrase, and she actually uses it in the context of parenting, but I've actually had it as a mantra in business ownership, and it's start as you mean to go on. So when she was talking about it in the context of parenting, it was like, I'm not going to do these things when my kids are 2 that I don't want them doing when they're 7. So start now as you mean to go on. And so like, if I don't want my kids to be 8 and still coming into my bed at night, I'm not going to introduce that idea to them when they're a kid because they're crying. Like I'm going to start now with rhythms that I want it to look like years from now. And so I've had that in this business venture has been, I want to start as I mean to go on. And the way that that's looked for me is empowering my people from day one. I knew that there was a certain level that I needed to get involved in the business to learn the people, to get familiar with processes so we can make changes that need to be made, so that I can get more familiar with the financials day in, day out, so that we can make tweaks to make ourselves more profitable. But I wasn't willing to get so in the weeds that people start relying on me for things that I don't want them relying on me for 6 months to a year to 2 years from now.
Yeah.
And that's been really cool. That's been really life-giving because I think it's given empowerment to my people who maybe if I came in and was holding everything really tightly and people were relying on me, I think that could be some of the nerves that are in these transitions for employees is they go, oh, man, if he's going to start doing that, like, am I even needed anymore? And I'm kind of the opposite. I'm like, no, I'm paying you to do this thing. You need to do this thing. And I'm here to provide you with the tools that you need to do it. I'm here. My door is always open. Call me 24/7. That's fine. But I need you to do the job that you're here to do. And I need to focus on being like working on the business and not in the business. And so it's been cool to see, you know, after the first 6 months that I've got a good team and they're crushing it.
Yeah.
And they don't need me to come in and start grabbing things from them, you know. But I still get out in the warehouse and carry around glass and help guys load stuff on trucks and get out there and, you know, to a certain extent, get my hands dirty. I just actually sliced up my hand yesterday carrying some glass around. So the guys were giving me grief. They're like, "You're in the club now." I was like, "I know."
You got your battle scar, man, to prove it.
Exactly.
Man, Mike, I appreciate it. This is I think that's and probably a great note to end on. Actually, it was what you took it right out of my brain, which is like, how does that kind of match with family? And actually, I'll ask you this because I think you probably have even a deeper perspective on it than what you just mentioned here. So I'll ask the question anyways. Because I've heard a lot of owners say something to that effect, which is it does give me the familial life that I was looking for, which seems counterintuitive because you're like, wait a minute, you're the owner. Doesn't that make it like harder to do or whatever than that corporate gig you're working or whatever? Just for folks and kind of like as we close out today, like what does that mean? Like why does it give you more flexibility, ownership, whatever that might be with the things that are important to you outside of work?
Yeah. I think predominantly because I have a killer team. Like, I think if I'm just a person who's doing a job for an organization, I am fully at the mercy of whoever says my schedule looks like this. And so the way that I've found that freedom for the things outside of work is it's kind of the two sides of the coin. Like, the success or failure of this company is the most impactful on me. Yes, like should this company crumble, which I don't think it will, but should it do that, like people could lose jobs, but I lost a business and I lost a lot of things from that, the hours and years that I put into it. Not to say that that's not true of people who are just working, but I think what I'm trying to say is your business is only as successful as you allow it to be. And so a lot of people think that means I got to be there always, making sure it's successful because I'm worried that if I don't, that it's not going to be. And I would counter that by saying, no, you actually can make it more successful than if you're there in the weeds, if you just have a really good team of people that are running it and doing the day-to-day and allowing you to be spending your time on the things that you need to be spending it on and not spending it on the stuff that you don't need to be spending it on. And so I just established for myself early on, like, I think the benefit that I had was I came in, if on day one I didn't change a thing, we didn't grow revenue, we didn't change any processes, it was a profitable business. So just don't blow it was kind of my mentality going into it. So I had that benefit for sure. But at the same time, like, I don't want it to be that. I want to grow it. And so I want to be focusing my time and effort on the growth and not just on the changes operationally. Because again, if I don't change a thing operationally, it's a profitable business. So where do I need to be spending my time? For me, it's business development, it's brand recognition, it's marketing, it's a lot of my background. And I want to be putting my time and effort to that. And that doesn't rely on me sitting in a chair in an office from 8 to 5 every day. Yeah. I can do that in the schedule and what it needs to look like for me and what makes the most sense for the business. Yeah.
The catch-22 is that you got to be able to create those systems in power and set it, Absolutely. Know, which I know could be tough for folks. Michael, man, I what a wealth of just nutrient-rich information coming. What's great is having someone like you on the show that it's kind of seen this full cycle of life, and particularly from a background that I think was unexpected. What would you say is maybe the last thing I'll leave you with or ask you is like, what would you say is the number one trait from theater that you use every day in the business?
I think what theater did for me in a lot of ways was allow me to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with, because I kind of view life as this story that's being told, well, then that makes us all characters in the story. And I just love characters. I'm still a huge movie guy. Like, I go see an absurd amount of movies. And I love story. And so for me, people are characters, and they are a part of this story that's being told, and a part of my story. Anyone that I meet becomes a part of my story. And so that's always just allowed me to be able to kind of see differences in people and value differences in people, and be able to communicate well with people over the years. And so I think that the whole acting piece, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase acting is reacting. Like, it's way more important for me to listen when that other person's saying their line than for me to just say my line and then not listen. It has to be responsive. And that's life. Like, it's so much more important for us to listen and to know what is what makes people tick. And so I think the most valuable thing to me as I'm trying to build a team, grow a business, build relationships with customers that may have been with the business for 20 years, but they don't know me from Adam. I want the ability to be able to talk to all these various different types of people and connect with them in a way that I think acting provided a lot of value and resource for me to be able to do that and just basically connect with anyone.
I can see that. Michael, thanks for coming in today,
Thank
man.
you,
It's so good catching up. Best of luck with it. Maybe we can get out there and go check out the operations.
Would
love
love
to see it.
Yeah, we're in an old, cool, like, airplane hangar, so we'd love to have you guys
well, then
out there.
count me in, man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love it. And great name, by the way. Sometimes you don't always get so lucky with the name of the business, but Alamo Glass is about as Texas as it gets.
That's a great one. I want to keep it forever, so.
Dig it, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the American Operator Podcast, where we celebrate the backbone of America, small business owners and operators like you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss out on more of these stories and insights from people who keep our community strong. Until next time, keep building, keep operating, and keep America moving forward.